Well, hello everyone, and welcome to solar EVs and kilowatts. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to take a look at our October generation, our October system production, self-consumption, export, and take a look at comparison between when we first had the system installed in September, and we're going to take a look now at the October figures. I haven't had an opportunity to have a look at that yet. So just to remind you what our setup is, we have 7.75 kilowatts installed on the roof of the house. We have also a 5 kilowatt Solar Edge inverter. The panels are 3 10-watt JA solar panels. The inverter, as I say, is Solar Edge, and that's the platform that we're using now for monitoring. We also have some My Energy devices, Zappi and the Eddy. I won't talk too much about those at the moment, they're for separate videos. So we're able on this platform to look day by day, week, month, and you can also correct it for billing cycle as well. And because my billing cycle with Octopus Energy has changed a little bit, because we were flipping between Octopus Go and Octopus Agile, my billing date changed a lot, so I don't tend to bother with that. I just leave it by looking by day, week and month, and obviously year. So we can see what we've generated so far. Just up on the top here, the system production is 1.28 megawatts. A megawatt is 1,000 watts, so 1.28 thousand watts, 1.28 megawatts, I should say, 1,280 watts. And 72% of the self-consumption we've used of that, and 72% is actually pretty good comparing with what I see on other sites. And we exported 0.36 megawatts, so 3.6 kilowatts, I guess, over in 36 kilowatts, I should say, in total export, which will return a rate of 5 pence to us per kilowatt, which is, you know, better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. So yeah, that's not too bad. 72% consumption. A lot of that is down to our My Energy Eddy device, which tracks the solar production, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. Import 1.4. Yeah, obviously with the solar panels are great, but you know, they don't produce solar at night, so we don't get any energy from that. We don't have a battery, so we're unable to mask that import when it's dark. And I would say on the dullest of dull days, we are only just able to cover our base load consumption of around 300 watts. So yeah, there's a fair bit of consumption. I can show you more of that in just a moment. So we're looking from the 1st of October to the 31st of October. I'll just go into the month here, and from the 1st to the 31st of October, you can see 400 kilowatts of energy. That, you know, compared to September, I mean, it's practically double that. So yeah, October's been a pretty poor month, and looking into November, it's a pretty poor month as well. You can see what our import is there, and you can see this on a daily basis. Now, some of these really high peaks here, you can see where we've imported you know, significant amount of energy, 50 odd kilowatts on some days. Over here, 51 kilowatts. We're also charging the car with our My Energy Zappi as well, and a lot of these peaks here, you see when we've either flipped over onto Octopus Go, where it's 5 pence per kilowatt, but actually more recently the price for the electricity with Agile has been cheaper than that with Go, and we've had a few price plunges as well. So a couple of these really tall peaks here is when we've had price plunging. That's when the price actually goes negative, and the grid are trying to offload a lot of that electricity or that energy to try and stabilize the grid. So we've been getting some energy not just for free but also negative pricing, which means Octopus Energy pay us for consuming. So they're the days that we've saved our battery up to 100%, I've charged our battery up to 100%. The water's gone on electric with the Minergy Eddy on a program charge, and we've put the washing machine on, dishwasher, tumble dryer. We haven't gone so far as baking a loaf of bread at 2 o'clock in the morning, but you get the picture. So that's why. But we'll talk about cost in a moment. So just having a look at day by day, and this is the 31st. So I'm just going to take this down to the 1st of October, just so you can see, what's going on. So the 1st of October, this will be one of the days where we've been charging the car. So the car charger, the Minergy Zappi, will put out a maximum 7 kilowatts. The car will take just beneath that. It's a Nissan Leaf. Excuse me a moment. So whenever you see peaks here around 7 kilowatts, that's the car charging. Obviously, it drops below that once the car's had the charge that it's needed, that it requires, or the charging timer has stopped the charging at that point. And there's a few peaks here when we're getting up in the morning having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. That's our 3 kilowatt kettle. And then on this day in particular, I won't go through every day like this, but this is just to give you an example. As we go through, you'll see that there's peaks. This is one of those sort of sunny, cloudy kind of sort of autumnal days. You can see where it really peaks up and then drops off, peaks and drops, peaks and drops. That's simply the fact that the sun is going behind the cloud, and it drops off significantly. Then suddenly it comes out again and it peaks up to 5 kilowatts and it drops down, then it peaks up to 4.5 and drops down, etc., etc. And as the sun moves around the sky. Also, what you'll notice in winter time is you have a very narrow band of generation here. In the summertime, it'll come up around here and it'll go down sort of around here. So you have a much longer exposure to your to the sun. In the winter time, and I expect in sort of January time, February time, it's going to be even narrower still. You see here we've got the self-consumption in blue. Up to about 3 kilowatts. This is where the Minergy Eddy works brilliantly, because it's charging up, or should I say it's heating up our hot water. It's tracking the excess solar. So you can see our base load here is around sort of 0.3 kilowatts, as indicated in the little table there. So once we go above 0.3 kilowatts, we've got excess energy. This would normally be green. You can see here at the top, there's an excess there of what's that, about 500 watts or so, compared to between the sort of consumption and solar production. About 600 watts there, isn't there? So what this does here is the eddy will follow the solar production, and it will take up all of its excess solar over and above what is required from the house until it peaks here at just over 3 kilowatts, and then the rest of it here is solar production. And you can see there that 0.747 kilowatts been exported back to the grid. So whenever you see this blue following the solar production line, that's the eddy working. And then the sun drops off, and so the eddy looks at it and says, well, I'm not getting so much solar now, and it tracks it on the back side of the curve as well, and it just keeps following that until such time as it's fully heated up. And looks like on the 1st of October it never actually completely filled up the hot water tank. Or no, perhaps it did a little bit later on. So here we go, it peaked again and troughed, and here we are now. So I take back what I said. The eddy has reached its temperature, and you can see now it's dropping off to about sort of 1 kilowatt. So yeah, it's done its job basically, and it just really just tails off while it's reached its capacity. And then all of this is excess solar. So you can see here we exported at that point nearly 4.5 kilowatts at that particular point, and again at 5p, that's about 20 pence coming back to us from the grid. And that just kind of peaks and troughs all the way down, and then obviously some hot water is used here, or the thermostat senses that the water's cooling and then comes back on again. So it's a really useful tool, that, and giving you hot water then for the whole day, assuming you've got excess solar to work. Then the solar drops right off here, and the house load takes over. And here we go into the evening. You'll notice that between 4 and 8 o'clock, or between 4 and 7, really, we don't use much electricity, and that's all to do with the My Energy. All to do with Octopus Energy Agile tariff. Between 4 and 7, it gets really expensive, peaking at around 35p. So if you can shift your energy outside of those times, you can benefit from much cheaper electricity. Good. Okay, so that's the 1st of October. Going on to the next day, we're going to see a different picture here. Really nothing produced here in terms of solar. No charging for the car overnight, because obviously we did it the previous day. Few peaks of a kettle in the morning at around, well, actually there's one up here about 3 kilowatts. So don't know what's going on here. Lights, maybe washing machine or something like that. These sort of little spikes like this are very typical dishwasher, washing machine kind of usage, because the hot water heats up and then the washing machine uses that water. And same with the dishwasher. I suspect that they were probably on for most of the day. Yeah, and look at this very narrow band here, 9 o'clock in the morning till about sort of 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the evening. There's a little bit of solar, and you're only seeing self-consumption here because this is all to do with the My Energy eddy working and giving us some hot water. Next day, moving on, similar sort of picture, I suppose, in terms of the solar production, but you can see a big spike here from the early hours of the morning where we charge the car up again. 4th, again, similar thing, charging the car up. You'll notice here that this is shifted over to the right because at this particular time the energy was cheaper between sort of 4 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning for some reason. And there's a big spike here. Don't know what that is, maybe even the tumble dryer or something. This might have been one of those days that was free or very low, and nothing going on here at all in terms of solar. So a much nicer day for solar production. Again, a couple of peaks sort of either side with various appliances, and we got a nice, albeit narrow band here. We've peaked up here. You can see there's a little bit of capping on our energy production because of the 5 kilowatts solar inverter. Maximum capacity at 5 kilowatts. So you probably heard of overpowering your inverter by 1.5, and the reason you do that is to maximize your production on the duller days. So you cover your roof in panels up to 1.5 capacity of your inverter, and what you're trying to do when you're building a system is cover yourself for the dull days, not for the good days, because the dull days will far outweigh the good days, as you've already seen. So what you will do is see on the very nice days, occasionally you'll see some capping here where it won't produce any more, but all the way beyond that you're producing much more electricity here than you would have otherwise done if you'd had just a smaller array. Okay, so on to the next day, and yeah, look at that for a peaky day. Another sunny, cloudy day. Nothing much more to write home about there, but you can see just how well the eddy tracks it. Even these sharp peaks and troughs, it mirrors it absolutely perfectly. So I have to say, out of the eddy and the zappy, the eddy is by far the biggest cost saving that we've had for an investment. And I think it was a couple £100, £200 or £300 to have it installed. Yeah, that's definitely going to pay for itself just in gas alone. So really pleased for it. With it. Charging the car again, you can see here overnight up until about sort of 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning as it tails off. And yeah, again, sort of a fairly peaky day here where the water's charging quite nicely, or heating quite nicely. Where are we now? 8th of October, similar sort of picture, no charging overnight, and a very narrow band peaky day there. Yeah, this is quite an interesting one, isn't it? Poof, up to 7 kilowatts. So, don't know what's going on there. I can't imagine. I mean, it's definitely kind of car-esque charge, but yeah, a bit of an odd one as to why it would peak on like that and come off. I really don't know. Perhaps it's not the car. Perhaps it's a combination of a couple of things, but don't know. Well, I haven't got a battery, so that's no phantom draining or anything like that people talk about. And then moving up here again, another example of the eddy working quite nicely. But a period here where we had some very bright spells going up to 5 kilowatts, and you can see that we've been clipped here with a maximum. and then a few peaks. And again, between sort of 4 and 7, you can see that we really don't use that much at all. And we're trying to keep our load down here. As you can see, 600 kilowatts. The children come home from school then. This peak here, just before 4 o'clock, you can see that's when we have the oven on. And we basically have our dinner at 4 o'clock, which sounds a bit crazy to most people. But actually, with our children coming home from school, they're absolutely famished. We have our dinner then. It saves... They're hungry, so they may as well eat. They want their dinner then. My wife and I will eat at the same time with the kids if we try to. It's about the only time we get to talk to them. And even that's a challenge sometimes, being teenagers. And we're done by 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then we might have a little snack in the evening. But you can see there, you know, the oven's on, and active fryer and stuff for chips or whatever you. We're up to 6 kilowatts here at sort of 6 or 7 pence a kilowatt. If you had that at 35 pence a kilowatt, you'd have a very much different bill if you did that every day. Yeah, okay, so another sort of peaky day. Again, huge peak here before 4 o'clock. The oven's on before the kids come home and have dinner, and another peak there. Probably someone's got the munchies, but that's after after 7 o'clock, which is really important. Yeah, don't know what happened here. We might have been out for the day. We had dinner much later on here by the look of things at around 8 o'clock outside of peak. Another charging evening. So you can see there's a pattern going on here. Sort of every sort of second or third day we're tending to charge the car up to about 80% if I can. And there's a peak before 4 o'clock when we have our tea. I've also got the use of destination chargers around where I am at the moment that are free, so I tend to use those quite a bit as well. So we're not using the Zappi to charge at home. Probably about 50% of the time, actually. The other 50% I'm using destination charging. But if I come home late at night, you know, I don't want to go shopping or anything or go and use a destination charger, I'll charge at home, particularly if I've got an early start the next day. This is a nice table here, isn't it? 14th of October. Lots of car charging again. Drop off in the morning. Sun comes up. Lots of generation. Got some capping at around 5k, but very limited. Don't worry about this capping, by the way. You can see it really only happens momentarily. During September, yeah, we did have more capping, but when you come away from that capping, look how much it drops off. And if you didn't have such a decent solar an array on your roof, you'd be right down here somewhere. So it's significantly better. Yeah, okay, so all right, not using destination chargers at all here, but also we're moving on to Agile. If it comes down to about 2 or 3 pence or even less, then we're definitely going to be charging at home because it just costs you next to nothing to charge the car. Yeah, no charging overnight here. All of our consumption, you can see here, the production is up to around 4 or 5k. But you can see here we've peaked up to 6 and we've peaked up to nearly 7k. Now, the reason you might see something like this is because it's a really nice solar curve. So we're basically a day here, apart from the odd cloud, we're looking at a very sunny October day. And so my wife actually says to me, oh, it's a nice sunny day, shall I put the washing on? And we will put the washing on, the washing machine on, and maybe even the tumble dryer as well. So you can see there that actually we've been a little bit reckless for a very few peaks here around 12 o'clock that day. But generally speaking, all of our house consumption, apart from these couple of little peaks, have been completely absorbed by the solar generation, which is absolutely fantastic. We won't have much of a bill that day, that's for sure. Okay, so moving on then, 18th, not much to say, bit of evening charge. Again, another reasonable day here where the house consumption is completely absorbed by the solar. Either side here, nothing I can do about this apart from getting a battery. But you know, batteries at the moment, I'm not saying the Powerwall exclusively, but that as an example, because it is one of the cheaper ones in terms of price per kilowatt. It also has protection in case of power loss, and it will put out 5 kilowatts, which for us would be fantastic. I mean, 8,000 quid installed. My base load here at 300 watts. I use about 7 kilowatts at night time, an average price of 7 pence per kilowatt. What's 7 sevens? 7, 14, 29, 28, 35, 42, 49. So maybe 50p. I mean, that's a lot of 50p's to make up 8 grand. So we're not there yet with batteries for sure. I think they're more of a flash and cool thing to have than saving any energy. And even when you're looking at carbon footprint, some people say just think about the health benefits. Yeah, I get it, but you know, I'm not in a position where I can spend that sort of money to offset that minimal carbon offset. I think we're doing enough as we are at the moment with the solar. Yeah, not much to say about that day. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. By the way, the left-hand side, I don't know if you call this the x-axis, and this is the y-axis, but the x-axis changes depending on your consumption or generation. We're all the way down to 3K here. So when you see peaks like this, it doesn't necessarily mean it's gone up to like 8 or 9 kilowatts. This changes. So here we peaked at around 2.5 kilowatts. This is, you know, if you ever see anything like 3 kilowatt spike, that's a kettle in our house anyway. This is why, if you're looking at batteries and it only puts out 2.5 kilowatts, well, your oven's 2.5, 3 kilowatts, your kettle's 3 kilowatts, you're just going to be drawing from the grid all the time. So you need something with at least a 5 kilowatt output. Another charging for the car between this time. This actually looks like it might be yeah, 230. This might be a go tariff, 230 to 430, 445. Might be a go tariff, that one. By the way, Agile have stopped now. They've stopped you being able to flip-flop between Go and Agile. Now, if you stay on one of those, go on one of those tariffs, you stay on it for 30 days before you're allowed to swap back, and they are going back over as well over the last few weeks. And if you have compromised that agreement, they'll penalise you. Well, I say penalise you, they'll put you on the original tariff that you were on. So your billing is going to change because you weren't allowed to swap during that period because of the new terms and conditions. Even though you were allowed to do it, they've suddenly gone back to people and said, well, that's it, you were told you can't, and they're going to bill you retrospectively. Right, so a bit of charging there. What a slim day that is. Very low load here. Lots of generation available. So we were probably out. I don't know what was going on that day. 25th of October, we weren't around. Yeah, look at that. So yeah, really nothing going on there. Look at that. So import there for the whole day. We were definitely away. We were away for 2 or 3 days here. I'm not too sure if that was a week. We were definitely away for a couple of days. You can see here we exported 14. We were away. I remember now. We went down to South Coast around Christchurch. So you can see here 14.7 kilowatts exported. So 15 kilowatts. That's quite nice. That's 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 75p. Well, it's 5.5p, so it might go to 80p back. And obviously we're out, so we're away. Nothing going on at night time. Just 4.32 kilowatts. We made up for it the next day though. 11 kilowatts import. Very little solar generation. The day we came back was miserable, and one of the days we were there were miserable as well. And obviously we need some more juice for the car, so we charged Larry back up. And 29th, yeah, uninteresting picture. 30th, again, not much going on. And then the 31st, ooh, look at that. We are sucking the life out of the grid there. Up to 5 kilowatts, so not much solar, but we just threw caution to the wind and obviously just decided we need to get a lot of washing done or something that day. So 24 kilowatts, that would have been quite an expensive day, I should imagine. So that's basically it. So just have a look now at our consumption and cost. This is our Octopus Watch energy report, and what you can do with this app is give it a date area to look at, and it will generate a chart for you showing your total cost for the month. So you've got to bear in mind we had a fair bit of charging here with the car. So this is our, as you saw in that little presentation there, for each day when we broke it up, quite a few days where we pumped quite a lot of energy into the car. So £66.57, which includes the VAT, and it also includes our standing charge of £6. So as you can see there, 60 quid's worth of electricity to power the house and our car for a month, which is insanely cheap. Bearing in mind my electric bill of my previous energy was over £100 for electric alone, and I'm paying about £200 a month for my diesel for my 100-mile round trip per day to go backwards and forwards to work. So what would that be? 200, be £300 a month. I'm paying about 65, 6, 12, 18, 24. It's about a fifth, let's say, of my original energy costs. A fifth. I mean, that is pretty good, isn't it? So, okay, I won't dwell that too much. So you can see here the graph, and we can see what our sort of average price paid over time throughout a day. You can see here this red line is the average import unit rate. Now, this isn't my weighted usage. This is the average rate over the month on Octopus throughout the day on average. Okay, so you can see here at the early hours of the morning, it's very cheap, coming down to about 5p. There were a few instances where actually it dropped down to negative, but anyway, this is sort of average. And then we can see here as the day goes up, more and more people in the morning are switching their kettles on, watching their TVs and getting ready for work. And then as we enter sort of work time, because industry isn't really at capacity at the moment, we're not using that much electricity, but then everybody comes home, everybody wants their dinner at 5 o'clock, and you can see there the average price going to just under 30p and then dropping off around 7 o'clock before we go into the following day. So when you look at this graph, what you want to achieve is, as this is going down, you want your consumption to go up, and as the price goes up, you want your consumption to come down. So you want the converse of the curve, if that makes sense. So it says your electricity usage is stable during this period. I don't know what that means. I'm guessing we're not peaking and troughing too much, and it's fairly consistent. And the cost is stable during this period as well. Total consumption was 687.9 kilowatts, or 0.687 megawatts, and our average unit rate was 8.73p. That's the weighted average. Now, I was with British Gas before, and I remember we were paying about 18, 19 pence for our electricity. So you can see there that we're less than half of that, and the actual standing charge is cheaper per day as well. So it's just absolute no-brainer going over to Octopus Energy. I'll put the link in the bottom for anybody who wishes to join, and if you use the sharing code, we both get £50. Information here on your national carbon footprint and regional carbon footprint. My base load here, 22 watts. That's obviously not correct. That's because we've got solar. It takes the average through the day. So but as soon as the sun comes up, even on a cloudy day, we cover our base load pretty much. So for the large part of the day, we don't have a base load. So it's only during the night time, the early hours of the morning. And then there's a little movable consumption, again not very accurate for us because we've got solar. Okay, so that basically ends it. Basically an overview, a pretty dismal October in terms of generation, about half of what we produced in September, but I guess that's winter, and that's the reality of owning solar. So long way to go yet before we actually get into the summer months, but that'd be really interesting, and we can have a look at a broad cross section of what we paid over the year, and we can have a look then at a payback of the solar system. But I have to say, when you combine the savings on fuel as well with the car, it's absolutely phenomenal, really. Some significant savings to be had. But what this graph also does show you is it's really important to maximize your solar production on your roof. So try and get as many panels as you can, because it's the dull days that you really want to manage. And you can see there during October we didn't have many peaks at all, but had we had an inferior array, then there's every likelihood that we'll have barely been able to manage our base load. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the channel. Thanks very much for watching.